Before the Emperor of Mankind walked among Terra, there was an event that begins nearly at the dawn of the known galaxy, possibly even the universe. It was the beginning of what would soon become one of the Imperium's greatest threats in the 41st millennium. This is the War in Heaven. When the galaxy had formed, among the interweaving matter and energy, a series of entities began to form as well. They were born of the plasma and electromagnetic flares of the very stars themselves. These entities had a ravenous appetite for more energy, and thus fed on the very energy put out by the stars themselves. They would feed on them to the point it would shorten their lifespan of the stars by millions of years. Over time, they would need to feed more, and began to ride on the universe's electromagnetic flux to carry them to more stars to sate their appetites. These entities became known as the Star Gods, or the Catan. As time drew on, there emerged the first sentient beings in the Milky Way. A race that advanced to the feats of space travel, understanding the workings of the stars and the universe itself, how to utilize psychic energy. Their understanding was to the point they could manipulate alternate dimensions and were able to even build a vast network of gates to travel safely through in the warp, similar to the webway the Eldari use today. They are responsible of seeding many planets with life, as they saw life as a gift and a precious thing. They are the reason today the Orcs and the Eldari exist, and other races in the universe as well. And then on the edge of the Halo stars lived a race of humanoid beings that lived sadly under a star that would constantly engulf them in ionizing radiation at all times. This would make them succumb to having short lifespans that, due to the radiation, making them die of different cancers and illnesses linked to the exposure of the radiation the star emitted. They were known as the Necron tier. Their existence was a morbid one. They would build their cities in anticipation for the dying rather than the living. The dead would be given monuments as they would outlast even the living. Their lives were so short that the living were seen as nothing more than temporary residents being hurried to build the more permanent structures of their cities. Out of necessity, they took to the stars and traveled vastly long distances using stasis to allow them to survive the time shift of the slowness of space travel. They set out to carve their own empire among the stars to realize the potential of their race and escape the harsh home they lived in. All the different dynasties in the Necron tier began to spread throughout and forming their own empires. The race, however, did have their own overarching ruler known as the Triarch. And the head of the Triarch stood the Silent King, a legacy title passed along from ruler to ruler. The three would converse on decisions, and the two pharaons of the Triarch would distribute their decisions among the populace, and the Silent King never speaking a word. Then came the day the Necron tier would cross paths with the Old Ones. The Necron tier couldn't even fathom the existence and the knowledge of this race, but one thing was for certain: they were jealous of how they managed to unlock the secrets of immortality, and refused to share such secrets with them. As time drew on, the Necron tier colonized more stars and planets, allowing them to expand further and further. This expansion, however, came with an issue of the dynasties wanting to sate their own needs and drives. This caused dynasties to succeed from the Triarch, and they began to war amongst each other. In an effort to reunite his race and stop them from destroying themselves out of existence, the Silent King Zarek requested a unity to aim their aggressions towards their true enemy, the greedy Old Ones, who would not give up their secrets to allow them to live eternally. This was the beginning of the end for the Necron tier. The Necron tier waged its war with the Old Ones, and though they had superior technology, the Old Ones were always one step ahead of them due to their use of the webway system they had. It was a losing battle, and they were pushed so far back in the galaxy that they ended up right where they all started in the beginning, their home planet being brought to their knees once again by the radiation poisoning of the home star. They would remain there for some time, exiled and nearly forgotten. This unwinnable war cost several generations of lives for them, and the prospect of battling a common enemy began to once again fracture the unity of the dynasties. Many were more than willing to give up on the fight and move on, but others, they grew a form of hatred over all other living intelligent life within the stars. To keep things together, the Triarchs searched for a way to not only keep them all united, but also a way to defeat their enemies for good. They made contact with the beings known as the Star Gods, named the Catan. Through discovering these entities, the Necron tier found their power to be unimaginable, and they felt that these were the allies that could lead them to victory over the Old Ones once and for all. In an effort to gain their aid, the Necron tier would have physical bodies formed from the necrodermis material they used in all their productions, a form of living metal. The Catan would then manifest and focus their energy into these bodies, and for the first time within their existence, they were now able to interact effortlessly with the physical space. This awoke in a new form of hunger within the Catan, a hunger for a new form of energy, similar to that of the energies they once fed off of the stars in the universe. This is when one of the Catan came forward to the Silent King, one who was known as the Deceiver. He spoke of a war that waged between them and the Old Ones prior to them being found by the Necron tier. The reason the Catan were so far away and had been hidden for so long was to evade destruction of their kind by the Old Ones. He spoke of that all the Necron tier could ever want could be achieved: unity, power, and above all else, immortality. The Triarchs spoke for some time over the prospects of accepting the Catan's offer in alliance. One court astrologer, Oricon, was the one and only one to hold a dissenting thought on this, as he had foreseen this alliance becoming the very destruction of their people. Sadly, these wise words would go ignored, as the prospects of felling their enemies and gaining immortality were just too good to pass on. With the advances in technology that the Catan helped to boast the Necron tier, and renewed their confidence in facing and finally defeating the Old Ones, there was yet one last piece of the deal to be honored by them for the Catan: the achievement of the coveted immortality. Catan revealed a way for them to free them of their diseased flesh and replace it with new bodies built from the same living metal used to build the Catan's bodies. These would make them more resilient and able to survive forever. So began the process of biotransference, for the flesh was weak. Massive biofurnaces were constructed, and one by one each and every Necron tier, from the lowliest worker to the highest noble, marched into them, and the process of transferring their mind, body, and soul into a new, nearly indestructible body of living metal occurred. Yet this is where the ruse was found out, and it was way too late once it was found. The Catan were not just placing the Necron tier into these new bodies, they were feeding off the very life energy of them in the process. It was at this point the Silent King had unfortunately realized the mistake he had made for his people. His race was now nearly indestructible, and free of all the aches and pains that organic bodies brought with it, and now there was full unity of them all. But there now existed an emptiness within them. The process cost them their very souls. Few Necron tier of strong will and mind retained their individuality and the ability of free will thinking, but even they were nothing more than shadows of their former selves. The vast majority had become nothing more than mindless automatons, no will of their own and no thought within their heads, just a series of programming code called command protocols. Though now soulless, one thing remained: the Necron tier's hatred of other living sentient beings, and above all else, the Old Ones. And with unity between them and the Catan, the war in heaven would take a vastly different turn. The Necron tier was dead. Now lives the Necrons.
Thank you for watching, and if you liked this video, please leave a like and comment. Click the bell to receive notifications for future videos, and until next time, stay jolly.